and welcome to this video all about the wines of Chile and Argentina. Now, the industries in these two countries have several things in common, from a few key brands that export a large volume of wine right across the world, to the influence of countries like France and Spain, when winemakers discovered the potential and the affordability of land for growing grapes in these regions. They inevitably influence the style of wine being made. It wasn't really until the 90s that Chile and Argentina exploded onto the international scene, and they give European wines a good run for their money, making it easier for the consumer to understand what they're drinking by labelling the wines with the grape varieties on the front and really providing quite a fruit-forward, easy drinking style that's made them so popular. Vines first entered the continent through Peru after the defeat of the Incas in the 1530s. Then monks and monasteries played quite a big role in growing grapes and increasing the volume of production in order to cater for the Eucharist. During the late 1800s, when phylloxera was really ravaging through the vineyards of Europe, many grape growers and winemakers had their livelihoods destroyed, and they emigrated over to South America, which, especially in Chile, has remained a phylloxera-free zone until today. So when Chile gained independence from Spain, locals were able to invest the money that they'd made in mining natural resources into planting vineyards. The industry quickly grew and they began to produce a lot of wine, but all for local consumption. After a difficult political period, which resulted in vines being pulled up due to a decrease in demand, once Chile had returned to the free market and a democracy, an improvement in technology meant an increase in standards and quality levels, which is when we really started to see Chilean wine turn up on the export market. These days, Chile is known for producing a wide variety of styles, both at the affordable end of the spectrum and with some well-established vineyards making wines to rival the quality of those found in France, for example. You only have to look at Chile on a map to appreciate the varied landscapes that you'll come across in this country. The vineyard area stretches about 1,000 kilometres north to south, from the Atacama Desert, which is home to the Uco Valley, to further south with the Malbec region. However, it is normally west to east that we find the variations in climate, as the vineyards run away from the cooler coast into the protected Central Valley and then climb the Andes Mountains on the border with Argentina. In general, it is a warm climate, but the Humboldt Current cools down the coastal region, bringing cold air upwards, and that rolls in through the valleys, and then the elevation of the Andes also helps to relieve the heat of the day. We also have the El Niño and the La Niña weather phenomenons, which can cause quite a wide vintage variation in Chile, with the former bringing with it heavy rainfall and the latter often bringing with it drought. Bordeaux varieties have been planted in Chile since the 1850s, and Cabernet Sauvignon still dominates plantings today, making wines at both ends of the spectrum, easy drinking, affordable styles that pop up on pub wine lists, to expensive wines that rival some of the blends from Bordeaux. Merlot is the fourth most planted grape variety and has been really popular on the export market for its really plummy, soft, easy drinking style. But it's Carmenere that is Chile's signature grape variety. It is a grape that is used in small amounts in blends in Bordeaux, and when the cuttings were brought across to Chile, there was a case of mistaken identity, with the cuttings being labelled incorrectly as Merlot. This meant that the vines were planted across the country, and it wasn't until 1994 that someone did a little bit of research and discovered that the Chilean Merlot was in fact Carmenere. Whilst they look quite similar on the vine, Carmenere tends to have a slightly more savoury green note to it and a little bit more spice, but still plenty of that brambly black and red fruit. Sauvignon Blanc is the second most planted grape variety, producing really citrus-driven wines on the cooler coastal regions and getting slightly more tropical as we move to the warmer regions inland. The same goes for Chardonnay, producing lean, clean, Burgundian styles on the coast. It gets more typical of that New World tropical stone fruit characteristics as it moves into a warmer region. Syrah in Chile really sings of the Rhone when it's planted in the cooler regions, retaining that distinctive pepperiness. But again, as we move to the warmer regions, you can think more along the lines of Australian Shiraz, with bolder, riper fruit and more intensity. Now, Pais is actually the traditional grape variety of Chile and was used for many years to produce quite rustic, tannic red wines. These days, with the advances in technology in the winery, however, you can find really floral, cherry, fresh red wines made from this grape variety, as well as rosés. As there are fewer restrictions placed on wine growers in Chile when it comes to their geographical location, we are still seeing plenty of experimentation with what grows where and how it grows best. So we will continue to see grape varieties emerging, and it remains a fantastic place to explore different varieties. For example, you're finding aromatic grape varieties like Gewürztraminer, as well as Mediterranean varieties like Mourvèdre. Think Argentina and you will think Malbec. The grape variety, along with several other European ones, made it over to the country in the 1850s as a viticultural research centre was being set up in Mendoza. Wine is a huge part of the economy in Argentina these days, but it was actually thanks to a weak peso that the wines really had success on the export market, becoming known as really affordable alternatives to European styles, really drove their popularity and success. A combination of altitude and latitude dictate the layout of the vineyards in Argentina, spread over 1,500 kilometres between 24 to 38 degrees latitude. The altitude is essential cooling influence at the lower latitude regions, which is why you'll find the vast majority of vineyards planted in the foothills of the Andes, with some climbing up to above 3,000 metres above sea level. However, most of the vineyard areas themselves do remain flat, making it easier and cheaper to harvest and manage the vineyard sites. Lying in the rain shadow of the Andes, the vineyard areas are hot and dry and often desert-like, with melting snow providing essential irrigation for the vineyard areas, especially when the Zonda, a dry wind that blows through, really intensifies the stress that the vines are under due to lack of water. In previous videos, I've talked about the diurnal range, the difference between the daytime and the nighttime temperatures. In Argentina, this is taken to the extreme, often seeing differences of 20 degrees Celsius from day to night. This has a big impact on the grapes, with the intense UV radiation at those latitudes and altitudes ripening the grapes. The cool nights really preserve the acidity and the floral aromas in these wines. Originally grown in Bordeaux and Cahors, home to the infamous black wine, Malbec really took on a new personality when it moved over to Argentina. The overwhelming, grippy tannins of the black wine were softened in the Andes, with that UV radiation really helping to ripen those tannins. The red and black fruit was intensified, and altogether it became a much more palate-friendly wine. Malbec accounts for 20% of vineyard area, and this has increased by 250% since the year 2000 to meet demand. At the top end of the scale, we see some producers making single vineyard expressions to really exhibit the way that the grape changes depending on the climate that it's grown in, with cooler sites producing slightly more floral, herbaceous styles, and in the warmer climates we see those typical really plummy, jammy, slightly spiced characteristics coming through. Bonarda is creeping onto the international scene, but remains very much in Malbec's shadow. However, it is Argentina's second most planted grape variety, with the vast majority of it being drunk locally. It produces wines that have really fresh black fruit, they're medium-bodied and often come unoaked. Due to the extremes of this climate, Cabernet Sauvignon can only really be planted in specific areas, but when it grows well, it produces some fantastic quality wines, often used as a blending partner for Malbec. Torrontés has become Argentina's signature white grape variety, and its very floral aromatic aroma is reminiscent of one of its parent grapes, Muscat. It can be quite dry and fresh, and with the increase in technology, we're seeing quite delicate styles of it being made across the country. Chardonnay is also widely planted and used to make wines through from entry-level, clean, lean expressions to very high-quality styles that are lees-aged, barrel-fermented, and have all those ripe tropical fruits that you associate with a New World Chardonnay. Mendoza is responsible for 2/3 of Argentina's wine production, and together with La Rioja and San Juan, forms quite a large region called Cuyo. Mendoza itself can be split into several sub-regions, with the Uco Valley perhaps being one of the most important these days. It's become known as an area worthy of investment due to the high-quality wines made at the higher altitudes found in this region. The wines tend to be fresher and slightly more fragrant. In the province of Salta, the vineyard areas lie very close to the equator and therefore sit between 1,500 to 3,000 metres above sea level. The rewards of farming at such extreme conditions are becoming ever more apparent, with really fresh, fragrant styles, concentrated fruit, with grapes such as Malbec and Torrontés really thriving here. Patagonia, nestled 700 kilometres to the south of Mendoza, has a much cooler climate, so the grapes are grown at lower altitudes, and varieties like Pinot Noir and Chardonnay are really thriving here and putting the region on the wine map. The South American wine scene is rapidly evolving, with countries like Uruguay and Brazil now beginning to export their wines. It remains a very exciting place to explore new grape varieties and different wine styles at affordable prices. Thanks for watching, and as always, if you've got any questions or suggestions, do email events@averys.com.